Good afternoon, everybody. Good evening, wherever you are in the world. If you could just let me know if you can see, you can hear, everything looks okay, sounds okay, that would be fantastic. And then I will introduce Thomas and we'll get the conversation going. So if you could just quickly let me know. And oh, let me just... Okay, I think I've just got my loop back. That sounded okay. So everything seems to be okay. But again, if you could just confirm in the comments, in the chat, just let me know. And then, like I say, we'll get Thomas in and we'll start talking. Okay, Steve, thank you very much for letting me know that everything is okay. Good to see David as well. So I'm really excited today. Everybody that knows that's joining in this today is going to know that I've got Thomas from Bricks. First time he's actually come on to any kind of live stream, so I'm incredibly excited to have him on the WP Tuts channel so we can talk about bricks. I've got a series of questions that I want to put to Thomas. If you've got any specific questions you'd like, if we have the time to get to them, we will definitely try to. But if you could do hashtag Q, that's hashtag Q for question, it just means that it's easier for me to be able to pull that information up and do a search to find out exactly what questions you're asking. Anyway, without further ado, let's bring the man in himself. Thank you very much, Thomas, for joining in today. So this is Thomas from Bricks Builder. How are you doing today, sir?
Thank you so much, Paul, and yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm really happy to finally be on the show. I know you've been asking for this one for quite some time, so yeah, great to be here finally.
It's been a while, but it's worth it, worth the wait. Like I say, I think you've definitely had your hands full with building bricks up to where it is today, so I totally understand why this hasn't been a priority, but thank you very much for taking the time out today to jump on and answer some of the questions, and I know that there's a lot of people that have been looking forward to this. So before we go any further, I want to say, like I say, some of these questions have been put to Thomas beforehand, so he knows what we're going to ask. There's a couple of questions here that have come in, and if we get the time, we will go through them. If you've got any questions, like I say, hashtag Q, and then it's easier for me to find them as we go through. So first of all, probably the most obvious question that I want to ask is, what led you to enter the page builder market in the first place? I mean, Happy Files is a fantastic plugin and one that I use on every single site. But there's a big leap going from something like that into the page builder world. So what was the kind of like the thought process behind that? What drove you to want to do that? I'd love to know.
Yeah, so it's actually a tricky question for me because it's been, what is it now? It's been 6 years, like beginning of 2018, I think is when I kind of started to write like the first lines of code. And so it's a bit tricky for me actually to think that far back to come up with the exact thought process. But initially, I was actually planning to build something on top of Elementor. So Elementor was like for me the kind of gateway into, okay, this is how page building could look like back in 2018, right? So I started to actually dabble to kind of trying to build my own custom theme based on Elementor. But pretty quickly, I realized there was a lot of limitations that I didn't expect, like as a developer, like where I felt like, okay, this should be possible, but it was not. Or the things that were possible, I think especially, I think one of the areas that was pretty lackluster back then in 2018 was dynamic data. I'm sure it has improved up until now. We're not really following up like on a daily basis what everyone else is doing, but videos like yours are always a great and really objective summary, like for us to just catch up what's happening, what new features are coming, how they are perceived by the community. So yeah, that was definitely a big area, and I think also something that you spotted pretty early on once we released Bricks 1.0. I think like on the day of the release of Bricks, you did a video, or like the next day was like, okay, Paul really likes dynamic data and Bricks already, and that was version 1.0. So, but yeah, it's been such a long process that like for me it feels like in another lifetime, honestly. Like now I'm just so focused on building, listening to the community as everything is growing, getting busier by the day. I'm not sure if it's possible to get much more busy, but it's been the community reaction has been just phenomenal. I was definitely, when you launch something like this, I think it's like for the first time, I mean, this is my first product of this kind of scale, how it's going to perceive, what's going to happen, and just listening to the community. And yeah, that's...
I think that's one of the biggest things. I know it's something that I've talked about a lot in live streams and when I've sort of been having conversations with people is it was a breath of fresh air on how open the whole development behind Bricks has been as part of the community. And I know you say you're a community-led project, which, like I say, from my point of view, is lovely to see, because a lot of companies out there that are working on products, they talk to the community, but they don't necessarily listen to the community. Do you know what I mean? So there's like this, what would you like to see? And then you don't see it. And it's you kind of feel like, well, why ask the question if you don't want to fulfill the answer that you get? So while I understand not every solution or every question or every comment can be addressed, it is lovely still seeing that sort of you've got that, sort of community-led way of approaching the features and at which point they actually bring in. And to go back to your comment about my video that was released probably, like you say, right back when version 1 came out and probably dropped within a day or two. Again, it was one of those things that I can understand. When you're not first to market, it's easier to look at what's out there, look at the feedback, look at what's missing in different tools, and then launch with that in place. And like I say, it was a very smart way of doing it. And Breakdance, I think, have kind of approached it in a very similar fashion. But it was still very refreshing to see that from a dynamic point of view, like you said, dynamic data, those kinds of things, that's where my passion actually lies. So it was great to see that you launched with a lot of those things that I've been missing in a tool like Elementor in place from day dot. So it's been a real kind of pleasure to see that and to take on the community sort of project side of things. So how big an important role is the community to what you do and how you pick and choose the direction you want to go in? Because obviously there's going to be a lot of noise in that community. So what's your kind of like driving factor there?
In terms of the development, the community around Bricks, that's everything. That's 100% of what we listen to, what we implement. Because for me, it's actually, if you think about it, it's a little bit odd. I mean, I'm not building Bricks for myself, right? I'm not like an agency trying to build my own product and then I'm just, selling to some people. We are building it for the community. So for me, the most natural thing you could do is just to ask your users, what do you want? And then of course, like a big part of my job is just to go through all the feedback. Like that's why we have the roadmap. That's why we have the public idea board. That's why we have the Facebook community. That's why we have the forum. That's why you can reach us via email. And the big part of my responsibility now is just, not now, since the beginning, it's just to trying to get an understanding of what the the kind of users that we want to attract, how we can build this and pack this like into a kind of, how should I say, cohesive product that just makes sense, like where everything like kind of fits together. Like for me, when I look at the dashboard and when I load the builder up, like I just want to feel in this cockpit where I know I have full control over everything. Nothing is holding me back. If I have the skills to utilize them, as I would do like in my code editor or whatever you use to build your website, that's what you should be able ultimately, from my point of view, in a page builder, especially in 2024 and beyond. Things like the class-based styling, that this is like something, not common in every builder is kind of, it's a bit, it's difficult for me to understand. That was, and also like, what also gets actually much more difficult now as we grow. And that's why for me, the growth is also something that we've just been very deliberate with. I know like normally it's like the struggle of you're trying to grow and you're trying to get some traction, but since we reached, or like we had pretty good traction from the beginning and very sticky feedback and good feedback loop, and very quick iterations, very quick releases, where we went from having this, I'm sure you remember when we used to have the section row container and like this whole very rigid structure that we then just completely scrapped. We went for the container on Bricks 1.2. Like that was like after 2 or 3 months, where that's the time. I can feel it now. It's much more difficult when you have an ecosystem, you have other products that are built up on your product. So the bigger you get, the more aggressive you grow in the beginning. When you actually haven't really refined your product, you run into all those issues where it's really hard you have this technical debt, you have this user base, you don't want to upset them, obviously. Of course, every mistake we make, every bug we introduce now has like a cascading effect, and that translates into like people getting frustrated and having to spend unbilled hours and like getting frustrated with the product. So I have to be very mindful. At the same time, we want to keep developing on like in a good pace. So then we went from the container to having like now our 4 layout elements, like all of those changes, which were pretty drastic actually. And we just iterated what I felt like was like the right choice at the time, even when it felt not really comfortable. And so I think the understanding from the community, explaining the things, the way why we do them, how we do them, even though I'm not as active as I would like to be, especially on Facebook, I'm not as much seen or as not as active as I would like to be. That's just because yeah, there's a lot of information. If you actually listen, it's much more work than to be the one like, I'm doing like a video and I'm just talking every week about something. I think, yeah, so that's where I'm basically spending my time. No one's really ever seen me, but I'm there, and yeah, it's a lot of work.
I think that leads me nicely on to my next kind of question. As you've already said, an ecosystem is now definitely growing around bricks. There's
Yeah.
more plugins coming on board, and it's great to see like Daniel from Bricks Forge is in today. Now, knowing how much of a limitation that has been and how much of a sort of a factor of how progress has slowed down on a tool like Elementor, and I'm sure, Divi probably had the same issues and so on. How are you looking to approach that as that ecosystem grows around it and the reliance upon these other tools, or people's reliance upon tools, have a noticeable impact upon the speed in which you can develop? I mean, you've obviously thought about that, but do you have any kind of plans in place for how you're going to approach it, whether it's a case of they'll have to play catch up, or you're going to sort of liaise with those to kind of, lay the groundwork, as it were, for updates and sort of big changes that may come to bricks in the future?
Yeah, so first of all, the ecosystem for me, like it's wonderful to see everything that's being developed around Bricks, the feature set, like also the capabilities that Bricks provides you basically to come up with those kind of solutions, which you don't see in every other software product, considering our size as well, our market size. So that's been wonderful. I think in terms of as we obviously have no control over, and especially like template libraries. That's like I mean, it's not a secret that the current community templates that we provide, the pre-designed templates, are very limited. We haven't touched them in a long time as well. So that's like one area that just like, a lot of those template libraries have been popped up, which is great. At the same time, of course, I can also see in the community the kind of, okay, now I got bricks. What should I get? Like, what are the next steps? Like, people just get really a little bit overwhelmed with like getting started with the first steps into the ecosystem, especially now that it's there and that it's also marketed well from other developers. One way for us to address this, and that's also going to be a big point this year for us, which we already are working on now, is completely revamping our academy, our own knowledge base, making it a little bit without giving, like for me, I would always like to try to stay as objective as possible, not really to like, only share like my personal preference about the products that I would go for, because I also know everyone has their budget, everyone has their own skill set. At the same time, I think we could give like a little bit of a better overview for people that how they should approach getting started with bricks and getting into the whole ecosystem. So that's something that we haven't really tackled yet, which is like this voice from us like is missing, that it's something we should definitely, that we are currently in the process of kind of, okay, how should we help the community to like understand those products better, while at the same time also trying to remain as objective as possible. That's what I always love about your videos, and that's also one of the reasons why I was just really eager. I said, if I'm going to do one live stream, if I can just pick one person that I'm going to do it with, it would be you, because I just love obviously you do produce a lot of bricks related content, which is also great, but even when it's not a bricks video, I always feel like that's like, this just resonates with me. It's just like this, if Elementor does something great, you say it as it is. If we fuck up, can I say this?
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay. You say it as it is, and that's what I really love about your videos. And if I have some time to watch them, I'm always failing to watch any live stream. I'm just rewatching them on like twice the speed to just catch up sometimes. But yeah,
I think it's important. I think I think as a commentator on the ecosystem of, say, WordPress, I think it is important when companies do a good job that they're told they do a good job, and when they mess things up, it's brought to attention. I do get a lot of grief. I'm not wearing my anti-fan t-shirt today, but I do get a lot of grief because people say that I can be very critical of certain products. But I think it's because we hold them to a high standard. When you set yourself to be something that's a professional tool, then I think you should be held to professional standards. And I do feel like that if you don't meet those standards, then there's nothing wrong with drawing attention. If all you're going to do is abuse the company just for the sake of it to get views, that's one thing. But I think if you're being critical to help improve or make them aware of the community's frustration as a whole, I think that's a positive thing. And speaking to, different people in different companies, the people behind the companies are actually understanding of that, actually appreciate that feedback. So I'm glad to hear that I'm not, just being critical for the sake of critical anyway. Okay, so talking about the future of Bricks, because there's a couple of things, obviously people are asking about version 2, when do we see that coming out? I'm not going to worry about that in a minute, but you've obviously got a plan. I don't expect you to be very specific about this, but where do you see, or where is you sort of aiming for Bricks to be in the next, let's say, 2 to 3 years? There's no point in saying 3 to 5 years because that's a very long way away, but what are your plans, sort of, if you look at breakdance, for example, Lewis has been very, very open about the fact that he wants to take a cut of Elementor's pie. And I don't feel like that is your goal here. You will look into get the people that are going to benefit the most from Bricks, building that tool that has everything you need in it to get the job done, as opposed to maybe pandering towards AI or pandering towards, the next big thing, and not necessarily worrying about me as a user. These are the kinds of things that I would want in a tool. These other things I don't really care about. So what are you could be as sort of specific or as broad as you want to be, but what are your plans for the next couple of years with Bricks? Where do you want it to be? Big question.
When you sent me over like the questions before, and you mentioned this also like 3 to 5 years, and I was like, wow, that's basically the lifetime of the product now. I'm looking back now, 3 years in March 2021, so almost 3 years ago, right?
Wow.
We launched, and if I'm looking back, and when I look at some of the screenshots I have, like the original interface, like even before version 1.0. And I'm looking at it now, I would have never expected that it looks the way that it looks and it functions the way and it has the feature that it has now, which I think is great. At the same time, in the industry you work in, everything is moving, I would say, relatively fast. I wouldn't actually say like it's too fast, because I also feel like when AI came out, or like it became a thing really, and everyone was like, but when is Bricks going to implement AI and what can I do with AI? And then for me, I don't really feel I'm ever in a rush to have to be like the first with any like particular feature to grab like certain user base, because growth is not like something we have to chase. We don't have to hit any numbers. Then, so for me, looking 3 to 5 years in the future is impossible, really. Even just thinking about the next 2 years, what I can tell you for sure for Bricks 2.0, because people were expecting once we actually launched the subscriptions, okay, now Bricks 2.0, that would be like the perfect gateway for me. But that was already as an event, and like everything behind the scenes was already enough as like a week for me. So that was pretty eventful by itself. So I wouldn't actually squeeze like something like Bricks 2.0 into that. Feature-wise, what you can expect, and I know actually it was a bit unfortunate at the time when I was introducing the components, when I shared this video on YouTube about components. That was like the initial idea and thoughts, just something that I've built out like over a couple of days. But that actually hasn't really received the work that I wanted to put in since then, because a lot of things happened in the meantime as well. The website, that was actually a big one. It was also an interesting learning experience for us internally, because normally you just work on this piece of software, right? Or like on a very specific feature set specific to that release, or like you really deep into like a certain bug or whatever development problem you have. But thinking back when I originally used Bricks 1.0 to build the website, the original one, and everything like the public roadmap, right, was there from the beginning. The idea was there from the beginning. The changelog, that was something that I have written custom in Vue.js, and then we just pulled the data from the back end to the front end. And looking now when we built a new website, it was like, for me, it was just crazy to think actually how far we've come, and what everything is built in Bricks 100%. I've written like maybe, I don't know, like 50, 100 lines of custom JavaScript just to trigger certain things that are not natively possible, but everything else is just Bricks theme installed, ACF for the dynamic data. You could substitute this probably with any other custom field plugin, and that's it, really. Like for me to just think back how far we've come from what kind of site you could build with the functionality that we have. That was just very interesting for me to see, to actually, have built a project of that scale. So that was a big one. The account area, that's also something we spend so much time internally working on certain things and then I'm actually kind of forget to communicate them. And people are like, oh, okay, there's like a new account area now. There's like a new checkout area now with the whole subscription. And I think it's for me now, I'm really excited approaching this new year, or having started this new year with all of this like out of the way finally now. So I think in terms of the development and the turnaround and the speed and the things that we can deliver now, I think this is going to be, I'm really excited about this, the coming weeks. So for Bricks 2.0, in terms of the features, everything you see now let me probably actually check quickly, not that I'm saying something wrong here, and then people hold me accountable.
Yeah, you got to make sure you say it right.
That's why for me now with estimates, also time estimates, I'm like, I just don't know. It's I would love to give more information, and I give them whenever I can, but at the same time,
to be honest, I think you take the right approach where you don't put a timeline on things, because I think the problem with that is they can bite you very quickly when you don't deliver when you say you're going to. So I think, exactly. and also to kind of go back to what you were saying about the differences between version 1, like you say, where you swapped over from being, using sections and things, then moving over to using the sort of container. And then now, like you say, you've got the sections, containers, divs and blocks kind of thing. It was good, I think, that you did that early enough on in the development because that's such a big game-changing thing to the way that you would fundamentally build things. I think it was great that you could do that so early on and listen to the feedback. And it was interesting from an outside perspective where I tested out version 1 and released the video and sort of seen how it worked. And then actually listening to the feedback and things that was coming back in on the Facebook group, which was at the time, pretty small compared to what it is now, and how quick you could actually flip that around, and the sort of the response you got from doing it that way. That's the benefits of being a young product. It's no rocket science there. If you look at, as you get bigger, as you have more users with more sites built around it, groundbreaking changes become considerably more difficult. You got to look at, take Elementor as an example, but also take WordPress itself as an example with Gutenberg and full site editing and how slow that is to actually roll out. So I think you definitely did it the right way, and listening to that early feedback and flipping it over to that, because I think you've built a much more solid foundation for the product to move forward. And this is one of the things I've been saying. A lot of people are going, well, when are we going to get in Bricks version 2? And I have no insight into it whatsoever. But I've been sort of telling people, temper your expectations, because the reality is you've got so many of those foundational features, templating, global classes. You've got a solid structure of all the tools you want. I don't personally think, and I could be totally wrong, you could be smiling inside thinking, oh, just you wait and see. I don't think Bricks version 2 is going to be a massive leap forward, because I think, like I say, you built such a solid foundation and you have so many features already in there. I can't imagine what you could bring to the table that's going to be like, wow, that is game changing. But like I say, I'm happy to be proved wrong.
Yeah, so what I can tell you for Bricks 2.0 for sure, and also in terms of the next big features, because I know global components is kind of the expected next big feature, because I talked about it back in September, but yeah, it kind of has been sitting there and hasn't really received much work at all, unfortunately. But once we pick it back up, that's going to be, it shouldn't take too long. But the thing that seems like from the roadmap now under progress, what I'm going to review first or next is going to be the native sorting and filtering and the live Ajax search. So that's definitely going to be in Bricks 2.0. Same as components, that's also going to be in Bricks 2.0. And personally, I would love to spend some development time to introduce some more workflow improvements, some quality of life. There are just so many things on the list, which I cannot really say anything specific about, honestly, because there's just so much. I kind of like need to look at them and see, okay, how long are they I'm thinking they're gonna take to ship 2.0 at around the time that I'm aiming for. Yeah, that we're aiming for.
Just speaking of the filtering then, 'cause I know this is something that's kind of been brought up in different questions and things like that. Are you, and again, if you can't say, you can't say, but are you aiming to have this, where you look at tools like WP Grid Builder or Facet WP that are specifically for creating those sort of filters and things like that, are you kind of aiming along the same lines as that, or are you not setting the sort of the set so high as that yet? I mean, do you have a kind of goal in mind how you want to approach that, or to what level you want to include it?
Yeah. So initially, and I think that's also been kind of pretty clear for everyone that has been using Bricks for a couple of releases, is the way we introduce features is more like on a fundamental level. Like there's like just like a certain groundwork and functionality that I just know, okay, this is how it should work, and how far we're gonna push it, what's gonna be asked for, how much, this is gonna fit in the overall workflow and possibilities of Bricks, of what it can do at the time. It just really depends. I mean, for something that's specifically made for like a certain use case and has a certain core feature set, like sorting and filtering, to get to a point like one of the market leaders in terms of the feature set, I mean, that's going to take time. So I think for everyone, and sometimes when we receive those kind of emails and people asking for when do we get components, how much will they be able to do? What about, I have this sort of website, I want to have sorting and filtering like in very specific use case. And I'm like, because I cannot give a date. So if you have like a client and you have a deadline and you need to build something and you know the requirements and it's not in Bricks yet, then I would just always have to say, okay, you have to go and probably acquire this third-party solution rather than trying to wait for us and get frustrated, because
that makes sense. Like I say, and again, this is something I've said in the past before. I think while we might get frustrated having to wait a little longer for a feature to come out, I would rather the feature come out being fully featured and working than be released because you feel like you have to and you release half a feature. I don't see that as being beneficial at all. I think that just leads to more frustration because it does half of what you want, but you still can't use it. Do you know what I mean? Just like buying half a chocolate bar that someone's already eaten half of it. So, okay. Another question that I've kind of been asked a few times is, do you have any plans, and I think I probably know the answer to this anyway, but do you have any plans of ever releasing a free cut-down version of Bricks to the WordPress sort of repository kind of thing? Is that something you've ever thought of? Or is it something you're happy with the way that things are, where it's a paid product, and you'd rather keep it that way?
It was a question I was asking myself a lot before we launched, especially in terms of, obviously this gives you much more exposure. What I also of course noticed from Happy Files, when it used to be for free back in the repository, like the organic reach that you can get just by having a free offering. Of course, like a drill down version with like a core feature set. But there are no plans for something like that, no. Because for me, it's sort of, at this point in time, it's just more of a marketing tool, like to have a free version, just to attract, you just basically widen your funnel, and a certain percentage of those free users will translate into paid users. For us, I would just, the size that we have, I think we have enough to listen to already, or at this stage now. I would definitely never say never, but I don't see this at any time soon. In the same way that when you would ask me about a plugin version, which we sometimes still get, surprisingly little though, the question. In the beginning was much more frequent, like, hey, okay, how am I going to use this? Or like even now, sometimes people purchase Bricks and then it's like, send me the screenshot and upload it as a plugin. I'm like, yeah, it's a theme.
That's the reason why it ain't working.
But it's interesting, even though we've grown much more, the users asking this sort of question, like the plugin question, it's really reduced. There's not that many anymore. So yeah, there's no plugin coming, there's no plugin version, there's no free version. As things stand, I think we have, continue as usual.
To be honest, I think having a free version is a blessing and a curse. It's a blessing, like you say, because it's a part of the funnel that can draw people into a percentage of people that would purchase. And I could imagine probably quite a small percentage, but it also means then you've got a much bigger percentage of people that would expect support and they haven't paid anything into the pot, as it were. And I can imagine that you have to balance up the sort of like is it worth having that there, and then technically having sort of two-ish products to support, because you're going to have different use cases with each one, I think, and probably different reasons to have to modify one to the other. But I think the support side of things would probably become a headache very, very quickly. I think you only got to look at some of the groups for things like Elementor with a free version and see how many comments and questions in there are from people that are using the free version.
Yeah. Another thing for me with the kind of interactions and the questions that we got asked, having, and always like from the beginning, aiming more towards the intermediate to advanced user, even though we have more and more people also transitioning from Elementor. Pro users, I mean, more agencies, like they already use it professionally, not like a customer, like it's just using the free version for like a hobby project, or people who use it as a professional tool, and they realize some of the inefficiencies of something like, that doesn't have like a certain feature that Brix has, which enhances the workflow, saves the time. It's just like, okay, you need to couple together like a lot of different solutions, and then this plugin updates and this one breaks. For me, if we can bring this all together in this one platform, which is Brix, and thanks to the input, and I think this was also actually a huge factor in terms of how well we are able to execute and build Brix in the way that we build it. It's just the kind of user it attracted and the kind of feedback, the professional feedback that we got, like those kind of consultancy, like in a lot of areas, I'm definitely not an expert, and then you have all those people telling you about accessibility and you should do it like this. And I'm like, okay, I'm taking notes, all day long. Like, it's crazy actually. You just, honestly, just need to sit back and just read and just listen. And it's a communication, and it's a tool we built for the user. And sometimes when I was communicating on Facebook, and I felt like I'm a broken record, like, thank you so much for the community and the support and everything. But like, honestly, like that's the bread and butter and everything has been built on, and why it's worked the way that it has. So everyone anyone who's maybe considering doing something in the WordPress space, if you have some ideas for your own product, if you listen to the people that are trying to build it for, I think that's a great way to start off, and you're going to have a great foundation for sure.
Yeah, I think it's
one thing that's that's the one thing that's never failed us, and that's something that I would also never scale back on. Even though at a certain size, like, of course, I cannot listen to every conversation. I cannot read through every day through every forum post and Facebook, and yeah.
But the thing is, you can see a common thread when it appears. Like you say, if you're scanning through quickly and you're looking at comments and feedback and emails and things on the Brix forum, you can start to see if there's a trend of lots of people asking about the same thing or experiencing the same thing.
Exactly.
And that way it helps you then, like you say, you can't listen to all the noise, but if you can pick and choose the things that kind of come together and group together and become obvious, then it makes it a little bit easier then to sort of focus on solving that problem, adding that feature, modifying whatever the case is. So I think it's an interesting approach, and definitely, like you say, I think a lot of other companies could definitely take that on board and benefit from becoming part of the community. Like I say, I know it's more difficult for you now because, there's only so many hours in the day. You have to have a life outside of all this. So you need to find some balance in your own life. But I do still think, like I say, there's however you sort of do it, that community is what makes or breaks you as a product. And I think it's important to have one foot in there and listen to what's going on. And even if it's not you specifically, but part of your team to kind of listen to it and just kind of monitor what's going on.
Yeah, and the beauty of it is also like sometimes those kind of emails, when we receive them and I answer them, like I'm doing customer support as well. I'm not just sitting on some throne and just, giving out tasks. But we have to actually spend very little time in our tools, which could otherwise be like a full-time job, because like you said, everything that's kind of relevant or that becomes relevant for our users, it naturally just surfaces up. Like I can see, okay, there's like this trend, or like the idea board, you can see clearly, you can see the upvotes, what's happening. It's looking from the outside, like for example with the idea board, and you just look at it and you think, oh, this already has so many upvotes, but it's not been implemented. Like that's also sometimes, like for me, frustrating or difficult to explain why certain things take longer, or why sometimes we work on a feature and then something else pops up in between. But there's like a lot of interdependencies or
Yeah.
dependencies between each other. How do you say
Yeah.
it? That just if you just look from the outside and you just look at this feature and you think, okay, like why don't you haven't you already done that? And like I could like spend like the next 2 hours trying to explain you why it's not why certain things go like a certain like a different order, but yeah, just having the community at the size that we have it, and while you're still able to follow like certain conversations, I mean, just yeah, it's priceless. It's really wonderful, and it's what made WordPress what it is today. Like the reach that we have. At the end of the day, the Bricks add-on is an add-on for Bricks. Bricks just is an add-on of WordPress. Everything is just contributing to this whole beautiful open source project that we all love and spend all our waking hours on.
And then some. Okie dokie.
Yeah.
Okay. What else do I have here? Right. Trying to make sure that I can cover off some of these. Like I say, I'm conscious of the fact I don't want to take up too much of your time today. Okay.
I'm all yours.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to take a look at some of the questions that we've got that have come in from the live chat. So this is one that's kind of popped up a few times, which is how many full-time people actually work on Bricks at this point in time? So what's the kind of the team size, I suppose, we're talking about?
Right now, we are still in the single-digit territory.
I don't see
Let's
anything
put
wrong
it
with
like
that.
this.
I think if you kind of consider, I mean, one of the big fears that people have is that if your team isn't, a big team, then putting your money and your faith into that kind of company is like, well, that's on rocky ground. But there are just as many big companies that have collapsed and taken their products and their services with them as small companies. It's not like there's some sort of golden number, but it is one of those things that I know we were talking off air when there's some questions that have kind of popped up which don't really feel like they're relevant to the success or the sort of the ability for a company to be successful in a product and things like that. So, like I say, personally, I don't see a big issue with that. Sometimes being lean is actually a benefit over being bloated. If you take a look at some companies that have had big marketing departments and PR departments and spent millions and millions of dollars in those things, only a year later to basically get rid of all of those people, you kind of have to ask yourself, why is that the case? So yeah. So this is one that I noticed. Go on,
sorry.
No.
Yeah.
Go.
I mean, maybe I can see the appeal and I can understand where the question is coming from, but it's also like in the same way that like a certain development workflow might go a different path than you would just expect from looking from the outside. Especially with software development and the way it scales and the way we can generate features. It's not just about, okay, I can write that many lines of code. Like there's a certain methodology to it, like communication between each other. If we would now have 10 times the people, we would not be 10 times as fast. Otherwise, Elementor would have already been at version 25 and you could just click a button and have your website and everything is responsive and beautiful and scalable and maintainable. And it's not as simple as that. And well, we definitely keep adding to the team as it's needed, but yeah, just the pure size is definitely, as you can see. I mean, you can view the changelog, you can compare it to all of the other companies on the market, and just see how we stack up against them. That's also, probably the best you can do.
Well, the thing is, I think the proof, as they say, I don't know if this translates, but the proof is in the pudding. In other words, you've got a product that is out there. People are buying it. People are passionate about it. You're developing it. You're actively developing it, pushing it forward, listening to the community, all those kinds of things. That, to me, is what people should be looking at and not worrying about the financials behind the company or the number of people that are involved in the development side of things. That, to me, is more important.
Yeah, I mean, what you can do as a customer, like for me, I'm not sure we'll get to this topic later with like the whole competition within this kind of page builder market. That's very interesting to be in as well. But if you're not confident like in a certain product, but you're still interested in it, just because you build with Bricks doesn't mean that you need to exclusively build every single website with Bricks. I know you say you use Bricks for like certain projects. There are others, where you maybe have like a different client that needs like a different solution and you're able to understand both products or the 3 or 4. I mean, at some point, probably it breaks down and you're not going to be
Yeah.
as fluent as you would like to be once you have like, all the builders. It's just impossible to keep up with everything. But, if you have like an alternative and so if one for some reason fades out or becomes irrelevant, you still can keep going. And yeah.
That's something I was talking about in the live stream with Imran, and I was talking in my live stream yesterday. I think as web designers, as well, people that actually create and work with clients, part of our responsibility is to find the best solution for their particular needs. And like I say, sometimes that's going to be something like bricks because you've got a more comprehensive project, and sometimes it's going to be a really simple project you want to push out the door really quickly, and it's actually more beneficial to use different tools. I think we should have different skills. As a mechanic, you can't just rely on your hammer. You've got to use other tools to get the job done. And I think, the same thing goes as a designer. We owe it to our clients to provide the best solution that we can for them. And that means part of that is the tools that we actually choose to use for that project. So, yeah, I totally agree. Okay, now this has popped up at least 25 times, I think, in the last 10 minutes, is with regards to WooCommerce inside bricks. And do you have plans to expand or create more advanced WooCommerce features in future releases? Now, how this takes effect, I'm assuming part of this is going to be the filtering side of things that people probably want to have in there, but what other things, you've probably been privy to this with people asking about it and specific features, but what are the plans that you have for more advanced WooCommerce features, if you have any?
Yeah. So I would say prior to Bricks 2.0, like until we reach that milestone, there isn't anything, how should I put it, earth-shattering planned in terms of WooCommerce that we'll just completely revamp it. I think we have our work laid out with like a lot of the big features that you can see currently on the roadmap and the improvements that we still want to bring to the builder itself. I'm personally not the biggest WooCommerce fan myself, but I would just leave it at that. But yeah, as soon as something big would pop up in terms of WooCommerce improvements, I'm not sure what's the expectation or what sort of feature is. Is there something specific being talked about? What's missing in terms of WooCommerce, or just the overall better?
Well, there's been a sort of like some of the comments that I've kind of seen were things like having, which I personally don't think should be part of bricks. Things like size chart. Like where you can color pickers and things like that. There's what I would consider to be something you'd use a third-party plugin to do because not every WooCommerce store requires it. For me, I don't think that's something that should be in bricks. But I suppose the ability to have more control over like the checkout forms, the cart for the forms elements and things like that. I think there's been different things that sort of been bandied around. But like I say, I think there's two different conversations there. There's core functions that might be beneficial to be able to edit, like I say, the whole checkout forms and things like that. But I don't see that it's a specific thing that you'd want to include in your builder to have things like, to be able to pick the colors visually or, do you know the kind of things I mean? Like I say, I would push them over to third-party plugins.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got
but nothing specific planned in terms of WooCommerce that you cannot already probably see on the roadmap or idea board right now. Yeah,
that's fair enough. Like I say, there's plenty of comments about WooCommerce. I think
a lot of time, especially with WooCommerce, is just keeping up with all the changes that they introduce in terms of when you integrate with them. Like every time I see WooCommerce update in my dashboard, I'm like, oh boy, I'm just. Even like sometimes thinking to time a bricks release, like, okay, WooCommerce just did a release. If we do it now, then, we probably don't overlap. Like, not that we do a release and then there's another WooCommerce release and then, there's some outdated templates. And now people are like, what's happening? And then it's just like, I need to update again. So WooCommerce is like, I don't know, it's like...
a thorn in the side. I think it's one of those things. I wish that there was a viable alternative in the WordPress ecosystem to WooCommerce, because I think they've got market share not because they're the best, but because they've got Automatic behind them, and they're basically the only one. I know you've got like North Commerce, but that's still in beta. There's a price tag attached there of several $100s, and that's always going to put people off. So it's a shame that we don't have more viable alternatives in WordPress itself to WooCommerce that maybe would open up more options.
Yeah, if you as an end user are looking for a different solution, but like for us to actually spend the development time to tackle something that has like a market share that's like 5% of WooCommerce, or even, I mean, it's really, there's nothing. The way I would say it's for us makes sense from a commercial standpoint to say, okay, now we integrate with this other solution. Like it's just not, I don't see this happening anytime soon at all.
That's fair enough. That's fair enough. Now, Richard's got a question here. Would you consider building custom post type features directly into Bricks so you don't need tools like ACF, Jet Engine, etc.? Is that something you would ever kind of consider, or you ever thought of being part of Bricks, or do you kind of think that's more a case of let's leave ACF, Metabox, and so on do the job they're good at, and let's just integrate with them?
It's just because it's such a market that goes so deep, like feature-wise, development-wise, I don't see any point of us adding to this. Like if I could see, okay, there's like something sorely missing that no one is addressing, and it's like really, I just cannot sit still, and I just cannot fall asleep because I need to provide a solution for it. But yeah, that's not our core business. That's not something that I would say we can add a lot of value compared to if I would put the same amount of time into Bricks core and just working on Bricks. So that's definitely not something that we would even remotely consider now.
Like I said, I think you've got to look at the benefits of if there's established products out there that people already know, love, use, and invested in, better to integrate with them than try to emulate or take away what they're doing. So I think it's definitely the smarter approach. Yanis has got a good question, and I know this has probably popped up a couple of times for you as well, Thomas, is Advanced Themer and Maxim. I won't call him Maxime today because he told me off for saying his name wrong. It's a big part of...
It's Maxime, no? Maxime.
Yeah, but I kept calling him Maxime. Maxime, yeah. Advanced Themer. I mean, that's a part of a lot of people's Bricks setups for various different reasons. Do you have a plan on working together or even acquiring it? Now, I've already set Maxim's expectations that if there's ever going to be a buyout, all the zeros in the amount are going to be at the beginning and not at the end. So I've made sure that whatever you offer him, it doesn't have to be a lot.
Okay, that's interesting. We actually, I mean, I'm having in my Slack. He can just. I see sometimes also he's texting and posting on Facebook. I'm like, you can just talk to me directly. You have my Slack. Like you have like a direct line to me. Like it's not. And we had calls, or like one video call together. And yeah, you can reach out anytime for sure. I can see on how many installations Advanced Theme was installed, the way they extended. Beautiful.
I think he's doing a great job. I think it's. One of the conversations that I've kind of had with people, going back to a comment you made earlier on, is that people have bought Bricks and they go, right, now what do I need to buy? Do I need to buy this, and this, and this? And it's like, the thing that I keep saying to people is, no, you can get away with just Bricks. You only need Bricks. You don't have to have these other things. The only other thing I would say is a must-have if you want to be as streamlined as possible in your workflow is going to be something like a CSS framework, just because it just makes life so much quicker because it's already pre-built, a lot of it out there. But I can see why a lot of people use Advanced Themer, because it does add a lot of ways of customizing. And let's be honest, we all like to be able to customize things. So I can't imagine something like that being built into Bricks, because I think it would add a lot of options in there. But I can understand why a lot of people are loving what he's doing, because like the visual CSS grid builder, things like that, he's very, very fast and agile to be able to create and bring these things. And I think it's lovely to see things like that, because it expands what's already a pretty enviable tool set and makes things so customizable. People can optimize their workflow. But again, I kind of feel like that is beneficial by being his own separate product and not part of Bricks itself. So I think it's great what he's doing. And I can imagine from your point of view, when you see these things being developed and released, it's going to be kind of exciting and satisfying, because when more people kind of come on board and start developing for Bricks, it's kind of like a proof of concept. It's kind of like, okay, this is now being accepted. People are wanting to invest their time, effort, and money into creating products around it to enhance what I can do. I mean, how does it make you feel when you see products like Advanced Thema or like Bricks Forge and things like that from Daniel coming out and expanding what you can do. What are your thoughts with that?
For me, just even because I was just checking today, let me just quickly double check again the number on Facebook. Did we hit the 15,000 yet?
Yes, you're over 15,000 now.
Okay, I mean, the exact count is a little bit below. We're still missing like 23 people, but just seeing the size, like, okay, I'm talking like now, not about the developers first, but just overall for me, everyone, but I'm just imagining like 15,000 people, like just a stadium with 15,000 people, those are all, now just looking at the community, I mean, the websites being built with bricks are actually more. And people, spending and their expertise and their time to dedicate it towards like a tool that I just, thought about a couple of years ago, and the kind of life of its own that it's taken on, it's hard to comprehend for me, and I should probably spend a little bit more time to just really take it in and just trying to, enjoy the impact that it had, and that it continues to keeps happening, and new solutions. Like just today, I was like also having like one or two interesting email discussions with, I think should also be, maybe he's in the comments here as well, about people having some really interesting ideas for extensions for bricks. So that's just, you could also say like, why would I go for bricks? I can approach like a product where I have like a much bigger market, but you see the kind of philosophy that we try to bring to how we develop it, how we approach the market. People resonating with this, smart people that could just do probably anything that they want and decide to do, stick and help the community grow, spend so much of their time helping as well. Like sometimes when I see how active people are and how much they're helping, on Facebook in the comments there, it's just incredible. And which for us in return, it helps immensely as well. So everyone who's just ever participated on Facebook, replied to a comment and just, spend their time, share their expertise. It's just, that's time that's those kind of resources, of course, that we can put and spend on the product itself, rather than, spending like a bigger chunk on customer support, especially for a lot of the new users. Facebook is a great tool. People can just pop their question in. It's been read by so many people now. They can get a reply much faster than we could ever probably in a lot of cases provide via email. So, just seeing this number and seeing what people build with it is just, it's crazy.
It's going to be incredibly satisfying. Because like I say, when you put something out there, especially when you kind of like you've closed yourself off and you in whatever it is, whether it's like for me like a training course or for you building bricks and things, it's like you can have all these ideas and your own sort of like way you think it's going to be, but then you put it out there and it starts to resonate with people. And like you say, the community grows around it and products grow around it. And like you say, this whole support network and the sort of sometimes rabid fans sort of surround it. There's something, like you say, that's incredibly surreal about that that experience of standing back and just looking at it. And I think when you're in the middle of it, it's very difficult to take that sort of like that higher level of view and look down and go, my God, this is based upon something that 5 years ago was an idea in my head, and now this is real, and people are excited about it and passionate about it and defending it and all those kind of strange, crazy things that happen. Which kind of leads me going back to your question a little. Oh, sorry, your comment a little earlier on about the market. So obviously, like you say, you are a product. I'm kind of curious. Do you consider yourself a page builder or a site builder? Because it's part of a theme. Your theme with the builder attached. But I always kind of consider it like a site builder. But how do you consider it? Are you page builder, site builder, or a different term?
For me, we are a visual site building platform.
Okay, cool. So with the ecosystem that's out there then, whether you've got Elementor, you've got Divi being refactored and so on, Breakdance, and any of the like Oxygen and so on, how does it feel being part of that? How do you sort of like feel you sit inside that ecosystem? Do you consider them to be competitors? Do you consider it to be just a playing field where you're all doing your own thing? What do you feel about this whole page builder, visual site builder kind of marketplace at the moment? Where do you see yourself sitting in that and so on?
Yeah, so for me, having this focus on really the end user, just like obsession with like just really listening and trying to understand where user base is coming from. For me, it doesn't feel I'm competing in this because the approach we take is a pretty relaxed one. Everything that happened so far has happened organically because others thought it's deserved and they share bricks and they talk about it and it gets recommended. That's how we grow. We never run any Facebook ads. There's no affiliate program. You're not getting paid to say anything here. All the videos you did because you wanted to do them, right? Same as everyone else. So for me, I'm not stressed about and say, oh, this is my competitor now. I'm competing with Elementor and I need to have this feature first, or I need to be trying to provide the best product that we can. I feel like everyone is just doing his independent thing, but that's just, I don't know how everyone else is talking with each other. I don't know if maybe DV is talking to Elementor and they have like weekly calls, or I don't know what's happening there. I can only speak from my experience. And I think we're trying to serve the same, of course, like people with different experiences and skill sets and requirements and budgets and backgrounds, but ultimately trying to help everyone, making this whole website building experience as smooth and pleasant and easy as possible. So for me, I think, if anything, I have a lot of respect for everyone who chooses to go down this route, because if you tell me now how much work it's going to be, I don't know. I'm happy that I just kind of naively got into it, and now it just is at the point that it is. But yeah, just a lot of respect for everyone who chooses to serve this kind of or builds on this kind of product. For me, bricks compared to happy files, like it's not even on this in this. Yeah, it's like a completely different beast. Like it's something. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say that's comparing a unicycle to a Ferrari.
I mean, also the workload. It's just like, for me, that happy files was or is just to build it. I mean, I would say development time for me, it feels like it's 1% of bricks. I would probably have the smarter move to just do a couple of kind of plugins like that, rather than trying to take on something like a page builder. But in terms of the growth for me, like in terms of the skill set that I have acquired, and yeah, something like bricks is definitely going to push you to keep improving every day.
Just a little push forward. Yeah. Okay, so we've got a couple of questions. Then I'm conscious of your time, so I don't want to sort of take this too much over the hour. But we've got some questions about Gutenberg and block integration. So I think this is probably relevant to, obviously, the way full site editing, the way that the sort of the block editor and so on is being pushed and so on. So Christian's asking, what about Gutenberg blocks integration? Do you have anything in mind there? The WordPress is moving more and more to this direction. So do you have any ideas of sort of closer integration into Gutenberg, the blocks, and a sort of closer integration between the two? Any ideas there on if this is something you want to go into, or how you would actually approach it if you did?
Yeah. So for us, integrating more and more with Gutenberg is definitely something that we will explore. Again, before 2.0, I don't, same with like those kind of WooCommerce thingies. That's something that will definitely not squeeze. I don't want to prolong the 2.0 release for like just to come up with like some rush decision just to say, okay, we did something about Gutenberg. But there's definitely something going to happen this year for sure. We have direct contacts at Automatic. I was actually just having a call with some people from Automatic a couple of, like, what was it, like a week or two ago? So we have contacts there if we need, to speak to the people that actually have something to say and that can help us in terms of testing, integration, how we can approach certain things. That's great to know already. At the moment, or like I felt like every time I check back in, I feel like that's just still like too many moving pieces for me, like too much stuff still getting introduced like on a constant basis, which kind of surprises me a little bit. Okay, I mean, it's actually a different thing. If I would have to build something for WordPress core, the thing you put in there at the scale, that's actually, if I feel stressed, I don't know how it feels like to really contribute to core on that scale and to say, okay, this is what we're going to have in Gutenberg. So, but having like a deeper integration, especially to make the whole client editing experience smoother, that's definitely something, especially in combination with once we have like a proper foundation for components.
Yeah.
That's going to be interesting. So that's why, again, I don't feel rushed. I don't feel that like we just have to push this like specific integration in terms of Gutenberg and blocks anytime soon, to be honest. Yeah.
Yeah, I think because we've got Gutenberg and full-site editing and all those kinds of things are still in such a state of flux at the moment. I think it's kind of difficult to have a definite plan there because they could you could build a functionality around it, and then in 3 to 6 months' time, they could change a fundamental aspect of it, which means you've got to go back and refactor how you've done things. And I think we just need to sort of let that settle down and see where that's actually going to land, because it's still so all over the place that I can't imagine it's very easy. I know I've got some other developers that I speak to, and they're saying that with full-site editing, with Gutenberg, it's changing so frequently that they hate having to work with it. They just don't want to. They'd rather actually stop developing their product or pull that aspect out of it completely than have to focus on it. So I can imagine it is probably a bit of a nightmare to kind of see where that's going and take into consideration how you implement it.
Yeah, that was actually also for me initially when working on Bricks the first 2 years. So we're talking about 2018, 19, and so much stuff was changing back then. I mean, it's still happening, but like for me, having a block-based editor and working on a solution like that compared to something like, that's why for me, I knew from the beginning, I'm gonna do my own platform. You just click on this button, you have this interface that this does not WordPress, like the whole, that you can switch between pages and create new pages. I think we had this feature since 1.0 because I thought, I don't want to have to go back and see this dashboard every time. I just want to live in the Bricks cockpit. I have my toolbar, I have my control panel, then later on the structure panel as well. There was something else I wanted to say, but I forgot.
It'll come back to you probably when you're just about to go to sleep this evening. You go, I wanted to say that. Let's have a look. What other questions do we have? Like I say, I'm going to do 2 more questions, and I think I'm going to let Thomas go and enjoy the rest of his evening, because I'm conscious of the fact that it's... What's the time there with you at the moment? 5 or 6?
6 p.m. 6
p.m. So like I say, I'm conscious of the fact I don't want to keep you all evening. And a lot of the questions in here are the same, which is the standalone and so on, and more integration with WooCommerce and so on. Right. NC, are there any plans to improve or add the WooCommerce? See, this is what I was talking about earlier on. Nestable elements. Right, we'll ignore that one. We push that one over. We've already seen that one. John, we're going to pull John's question up because AI is something we've talked about a little bit.
That's a good one.
How do you see AI affecting the future of Bricks? Do you see it having any impact upon what you do, or are you going to embrace the technology and integrate, or what?
Definitely. I mean, that's like, for me, this is definitely a super interesting topic. At the same time, when I was watching how others were already kind of trying to implement it, like just to basically save you the trip to another browser tab where you just, come up with your prompt. So it was about like generating like headings, generating like text, maybe background removal was like a thing. Like, to me, this all felt very, that's not where I want to start with AI, like for Bricks. So we are actually, I mean, internally we're already using it, like certain features. I cannot say too much, to be honest. Like, for me, not that I'm trying to hold back any information, but I just feel more comfortable when I see it's at a stage where I feel, okay, I can share and talk about it. But it's definitely going to be an interesting topic and something that we will 100% also start to embrace. When I see like a certain use case that we can implement, that's not about, okay, how can I remove the background from this image within Bricks? Like, that's not really where I want to start. Yeah,
you don't want to just become Bricks with Canva bolted on. So, okay, we're going to finish up with Artive's question, I think. What would you want to see as a feature or improvement to WordPress core? So, taking a look at the WordPress core itself, what would you like to see as the biggest improvement that they could bring to the table, especially if it has some kind of knock-on effect to help you in your Bricks workflow and development?
Are we talking about WordPress in general? So this is not specific to Gutenberg or blocks?
Yeah, I think we say WordPress in general, whichever aspect of WordPress you feel like you'd like to see the biggest improvement in. Or was that a difficult question, though? Bit of a curveball.
It's a good question, but I'm just thinking, like, in Bricks core, that could actually benefit, like, the
removing Gutenberg and full-site editing completely? The whole thing out and throw it away and start again. Just get rid of it. Artif, we're going to say that's a terrible question. I'm going to ignore that. Forget that one, Thomas. We'll move on.
It's a good one. It's a good one. But honestly, I need much more time to come up with like an
That's fair enough.
So, which is actually a good thing in core itself. Like, you know, if I would not say there's like a certain pain point that I can immediately spot for myself. But now the whole focus is on Gutenberg. So everything besides Gutenberg, I feel like isn't really getting too much attention anyway. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Now I'm going to ask a question now because Marcel's asked this about 15 times, so I'll pop this up on here. When will you have a chat with Kevin Geary? What are your thoughts about his channel and tools? So controversial possibly with any thoughts, but Marcel has asked that several times. So we'll pop that one in there as the last question for this live stream.
Well, obviously, I'm in contact with Kevin. We text sometimes. We haven't had a call yet. I mean, not a public call, but also not in private. I'm thinking, did we have a call? Not yet. So no, there's nothing scheduled. I think those kind of questions, like the thoughts about the tools and channels, that's probably something, if we have the call, that makes sense to discuss it there, I would say.
If I'm honest, I think what Kevin's doing, regardless of what you may think of his approach and things like that, he's doing an awful lot to highlight, I think, to best practices, to better ways of working, and showing bricks as a great tool to be able to work in those ways, you know, through global classes, through using core frameworks and things like that. I think regardless of how you may feel about his personality and the way he delivers things, I think he is definitely doing a very, very positive thing for the industry. And like I say, and because he's taken bricks as the sort of the core for doing that, I think it's definitely raising awareness. And you can only see from the comments and the feedback and things in the Facebook groups and things, I think it's doing a good thing. Whether you agree or disagree with the way that he delivers, I still think he's doing a good thing to raise awareness and to help people that maybe would like to improve their skills and not necessarily know which direction to go in, opening up ideas, opening up channels to sort of understand how different aspects of more professional web design actually work. And you can see from the feedback that a lot of people really do appreciate what he's bringing to the table. So I definitely think there's a positive aspect to take out of all the content he's putting out there about bricks. So kudos for doing that. Okay, well, I want to say, first of all, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to join me on this live stream, and for actually, you know, this being the first live stream you've actually jumped on, so that's an absolute privilege for me to have you on here and have a chat to you today. So I'm sure everybody else in the chat will say thank you very much for taking the time out of your day. Is there anything you'd like to say at the end of this live stream before we sort of close things down?
I was not prepared for that question.
You can just say the check's in the post if you want to, Paul.
No, I mean, one thing that but again, sounding like a broken record, but everyone contributing to the project, be it on Facebook, just by helping other users, submitting to the idea board, being active in the forum, sharing the word, like the whole growth, everything has happened organically. So no, I think I've been never having pushed any agenda or like aggressively tried to market the tools. It just, you know, if people continue to, support it in the way they did it already, I think we're going to have a great future, and especially 2024, now that a lot of especially after Bricks 2.0, which is not too far off, I think we have like a really good foundation to, kind of, and I don't want to say too much, but thank everyone for watching. I also know like a lot of people just send me messages and said, okay, I'm going to watch, I'm going to join this. But for me, I'm just trying to read through some of the comments, but I'm not sure how you follow up actually with all of this. I'm just trying to keep up. It's really a skill you need to acquire. Like I'm just lost here.
Well, there's been a few comments, and I want to say thank you to everybody for joining in today, and anybody that watches us on the replay. If you've got any comments, please do drop those in the comment section down underneath. But Thomas, thank you so much for taking the time out to answer questions that I've had, the community's had, and what we've had on you tonight. I'm sure everybody appreciates the time that you've taken to become involved. And thank you so much for what you're doing with Bricks, listening to the community and creating a solid product that I'm sure pretty much everybody, if not everybody in here, is enjoying working with. So thank you very much. And thanks to everybody else for joining in. It's been great to talk to you today, and great to get everybody else involved. So thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you, Paul.